Good evening, class. We are studying the tribe of Issachar. We are working our way to the end of our study of where the tribes went. Where are they today? And so tonight we are continuing to look at the tribe of Issachar. And if you are on page 3 with me, we are at note 9. And we're looking at another son of Issachar. And this son was called Fuva, or Puva. And of course you know that in the Hebrew alphabet, P and PH are the same. One has a P sound, P. The other letter, Fe, looks identical. And so the PH sound would have, just like it does in English, an F sound. So Fuva or Puva. And we see him in Genesis 46:13. The sons of Issachar were Tola, Puva, and it can also, like I said, look like Fuva with the PH, Job, and Shimron. So we know that the children were known as Phuni or Puni. Okay? So in Numbers, the 26th chapter and the 23rd verse, we see this family group, and it says the sons of Issachar according to their families were of Tola, the family of the Tolaites, of Pua, the family of the Punites. And you will, if you're going to trace them and you're going to look at these people groups, you will look for these names and then you will find where their descendants went. Now, Puni was a name given to the Phoenicians, among whom the Israelite tribes such as Zebulun, Zebulon, and Asher were at some times a very important component. They were very close to they obviously in their land allotments in the land were very close to the Phoenicians. They picked up a great deal of culture from the Phoenicians, and even the type of Hebrew that was spoken in the northern kingdoms of Israel had a Phoenician basis. Remember, they kind of took some from the Phoenician language, and their Hebrew in the northern kingdom was a little bit different than that of the kingdom of Judah in the south. So the major Phoenician cities were Tyre and Sidon, S-I-D-O-N. Now what is so interesting, we just said that the tribes of Zebulun and the tribes of Asher that were Israelite tribes were a very important part of the Phoenician people group. And Sidon was conquered for a while by the Issachar. And right away you should see something from Issachar. What do you see? Isaac. So they were conquered by the Issachar, who were one of the sea peoples. And I will simply say they also learned about the sea peoples from the Phoenicians. And they were Israelites. Now the Issachar were from the tribe of Issachar. So right away, you see Sidon, which had people groups from the tribes of Zebulun and Asher. And now here come the Issachar, who conquered Sidon, and they were from the tribe of Issachar. So already, what do you see? You see brethren who are attacking brethren and overcoming brothers who they don't even recognize their brothers. And the Phoenicians received their name from Phuni, the son of Issachar. So you can begin to see how the tribes now have inter and commingled Now, an ethnic entity of a very similar name was widely scattered, okay? In Ireland, Ireland, one has the Feni, and there's a people group called the Feni in Ireland. Now remember what I said about having both the P sound, the hard P sound, and also the F sound. So you can see in Ireland they took the F sound, Feni. In Denmark, the Fundusi, you still have the F sound there spelled, but the same people group. In Scandinavia, she's not here tonight, I don't know where, I think she's, I don't know where she is, but she's not here tonight. I thought she was going to be back by now, but she isn't, so. The Fenones and the Finni, F-I-N-N-I, who were on the Baltic Sea coast. So these are all descendants of the tribe of Issachar from his son Funi or Puni. Now what's interesting is the Finni, who are on the Baltic Sea coast, is the people group who gave their name to Finland, F-I-N-L-A-N-D, Finland. Makes sense. Now in the area, any questions on the Punis and the Funis and where they all went? Ireland and Scandinavia and Finland. In the area of Austria and Hungary, once dwelt the people group who gave the name Pannonia to that region. So they were there for a while. Again, they had the Puni, the P sound, and they called their area Pannonia. And then they migrated on to Switzerland. Switzerland, S-W-I-T-Z-E-R-L-A-N-D. So now you're seeing they're still migrating. And then it goes all the way back to God said, I will scatter you across. I will scatter you to the ends of the earth. But in going and scattering, you're going to be a blessing. Now in East Switzerland were a people named Issachari. And I think you're seeing right away that that is a derivative of the name Issachar. And Job, or Job, and again, in Hebrew, the sound that gets anglicized with a J sound is obviously a Y sound in Hebrew. For example, in English we call the name of God, I am that I am, Jehovah. But in Hebrew it's Yahweh. Okay, so same name. So sometimes you'll see it as Job, depending where they ended up. Other times it'll be Job. Son of Issachar was also called Jashub in Hebrew. So Yashub is pronounced as Yashuv, Y-A-S-H-U-V. And you will see that name in Numbers 26-24. Right away, you see something about Hebrew. Remember the Hebrew letters, bet and vet. Bet has a B sound, vet has a V sound. And the only difference is where the little dots put. And how you can tell a vet, so it's going to be vet, from a bet. And I tell you this from Hebrew school. You just have to understand this is how you were taught Hebrew. Bet has a belly button, and vet does not. Now, we may be adults, but I guarantee you'll remember that. If you ever see those two letters together, you say, well, I know this is bet because it has a belly button. So adults learn the same way children learn. Now, in the 13th note, Issachar, so where did they end up? And well, Issachar accounted for a good portion of the people of Switzerland. Are we saying that everybody who lives in Switzerland is of the tribe of Issachar? No. But members of the descendants of Issachar make up a large portion of the people of Switzerland. They also make up a large portion of the land, obviously, of Finland. Finland. And something that is quite interesting is there is a large Messianic group of people of Jewish descent and also Gentiles who belong to those fellowships in the nation of Finland. There is a large Christian presence in Finland who are very Messianic, both Gentiles and obviously people of Jewish descent, but also many of those Gentiles are more than likely what? Israelites, descendants of Israelites. In fact, we had a guide in 2006 who was Finnish and had come to Israel and had actually would go back and forth between Israel and Finland and was Messianic. The Finnish word for father is Issa. And what is interesting about this is only in Finnish is this word found. You don't find it in any other language for father, anything even close to it, Issa. And so many members of the population of Finland say they are descended from Issachar. Now understand, what are you saying then? Father, Issa, father. Now they say that their word for father really is Issa, and it's short for Issachar. In other words, they are speaking of their father, Issachar. And we even use similar terms in English. Remember our forefathers? We use our forefathers. So in other words, they're saying, well, we descended from Issachar. We shorten it to Issa. And so every time we even use this word father, we're harkening back to our ancestor. A province in the south of Finland, and that shouldn't, whatever that is there, an I shouldn't be there, but a province in the south of Finland is called Mikkeli. And very possibly could have been named for Michael, one of the heads of the clans, C-L-A-N-S, clans of Issachar. So by Chronicles, we're beginning to see not only sons of and descendants, but we're seeing clans. So in 1 Chronicles 7:3, it said, the sons of Uzzi were Israhiah, and the sons of Israhiah were Michael, Obadiah, Joel, and Ishiah. All five of them were chief men. And these, of course, were a clan of Issachar. And you can see that if you have a Bible like mine, if you don't, I'll tell you. Above the 7th chapter in my Bible, it says the family of Issachar. And it will talk, first of all, 7:1, the sons of Issachar, Tola, Puah, Jashub, and Shimron, 4 in all. And then it will talk about the sons of Tola and the sons of Uzzi. And so now you're going down into the clans of Issachar. And by the way, you kind of know how far we're coming now to finish up with the tribes, because you'll see that it talks about the tribe of Benjamin next. So, two minor subclans of Issachar. In other words, families spread out, right? They marry, children marry, and then you have subclans. So two subclans are Yameh, also known as Yakmai, or Jakmai. Again, it can be either way. And Yivsam, also known as Jibsam. And these sub-clans, all descendants of Issachar, all in the tribe of Issachar, may have given their names to the Finnish provinces of Kim and Uusima. And it's very interesting that these two provinces, both Kim and Uusima, are two provinces located south of Mikkeli in Finland. So you can see the birds of a feather flocking together, gathering together, sometimes not even knowing they're related, but they are. Now, according to Rabbi Don Isaac Abarbanel, he does a character description of Issachar. And he said, Issachar loves rest. Just loves rest. He is unwarlike and prefers to pay others to fight for him. He doesn't like to fight for himself. And many of Issachar's tribe are of a peasant's disposition and inclined to work the land. And we know that there were some things said about Issachar from the very beginning, in liking rest. Now, from out of the sons of Issachar were also to come wise men who had a desire for intellectual pursuits. They had understanding. Anyone remember a scripture talking about the sons of Issachar who had understanding of the times? The sons of Issachar also had a philosophical bent. And Talmudic scholars have said that the tribes of Judah, Levi, and Issachar produced sages or wise men capable of determining what the practical application of the law should be. You know the law says this, but what's the practical application of it? And so it seems that members of the tribe of Issachar demonstrated legalistic inclinations. In other words, and now as you're beginning to think about one of those countries where most of the tribe of Issachar ended up, something should come to mind. Geneva, Switzerland. So many of the descriptions of the tribe of Issachar fit Switzerland. Always hear about, peace treaties in Geneva and so I want us to go to Genesis 49:14. And so you know right where I'm going to go with this. Genesis 49:14. Speaking of Issachar. Issachar is a strong donkey. And I want you to just kind of do a mental post-it note that, because we're going to talk about that later on too. Lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good. I remember what the rabbi had said about the people of Issachar, descendants of Issachar, not just Issachar, but all his descendants, what they were like. They liked rest. He saw that rest was good and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden and became a band of slaves. So it seems that Issachar had difficulty. He laid down between two burdens. I'm not going to one side or the other. I'm just going to be neutral. We know what we hear about Switzerland. Neutral. Switzerland has traditionally been neutral in world disputes. I said they'd like to, they use money to get what they want. Well, the nation has used its financial influence to fend off enemies. And we're going to look at a little bit with this, because basically, they just took money from both sides. They'll take money from whichever side can help them at any time. And they made it worthwhile for others to respect its neutrality. Now, there was one group of the Swiss, the Helvetii, and their descendants, who did exhibit great militant prowess. They were good soldiers. And believe it or not, even though they as a people group preferred to pay someone else to do their fighting for them, there actually were Swiss mercenaries that probably woke up one day and said, wait a minute, why are we paying other people to fight for us when if we fought, we would get the money? And so they began, there was a group, the Helvetii, who decided that they wanted to be mercenaries and they should be getting the pay for fighting for somebody else. So they were the most sought after in Europe, the Swiss mercenaries who would fight for whatever their cause there was. They were the most sought after in Europe. I think it's also noteworthy that to this day, 2023, the armed and highly trained and highly disciplined pontifical Swiss Guard is responsible for the protection of Roman Catholic popes, the Swiss Guard. Any questions? Any questions, comments about Swiss Guard? Okay. Also, even in biblical times, the tribe of Issachar demonstrated its military might. And if you will turn to Judges 5:15. Judges 5:15. This is under Deborah. In the Song of Deborah, it says, and the princes of Issachar were with Deborah. As Issachar, so was Barak. So they were with her in the war against the Canaanites. So they had a military force. Now, in the time of King David, and this is in 1 Chronicles chapter 7, and I reference this. And again, as they look at the descendants, so we're actually moving back to see characteristics that people have found in the descendants of Issachar. It said they were wise people. They were able to think. They were able to reason. And in 1 Chronicles 7, chapter 2, it says, where they're talking about the sons. And you get to verse 5. Now their brethren among all the families of Issachar were mighty men of valor. Many men of valor. Okay? So they were mighty men of valor. They also had an understanding of the times. They knew what to do. Now, in the same pattern,
what was that?
Warriors. They were warriors. Warriors. Warriors, warriors and mighty men of valor. So they were mighty men of valor. They were warriors. And in the time of David, they had understanding of the times in which Israel should go. Now, in the same pattern, Finland, which also received descendants of Issachar, though traditionally neutral. Finland is also another neutral country. Finland is also a very interesting country. They were the only country that has ever paid 100% of loans they got from the United States back to the United States. Little Finland. And all the money we've ever loaned out, Finland is the only one that has paid 100% of the loan back. They were peaceable, but they also could demonstrate their military strength. And I love this. Finland, not a huge country, but little Finland defeated Russia single-handedly on the battlefield. They fought Russia from November the 30th, 1939 to March the 13th, 1940, and defeated Russia. And that is a big part of Finland's history that they will talk about often. And they should. And they should. Well, everybody else seems to give in.
Yeah.
Little Finland said, we're not giving in. Both the Swiss and the Finns are conceived by other nations as peasant types. So they may look like peasants with histories of producing individuals of great intellect, and a contemplative character. They have reasoning skills.
Is that next one character?
Character, yes, C-H-A-R-A-C-T-E-R, character. So they have great intellect, they're known to have intellect, and they have reasoning ability. They have a contemplating character. They can really think things through. Now, in Genesis chapter 30, we're going to keep going back from then to now. So we go back to Genesis 30 and 16 through 18. And this tells the story of the name of Issachar. And I'm just going to pick it up. Let's pick it up at 14, just so for if you're not familiar with the story. Now Reuben. Now remember, Reuben was the firstborn. Now Reuben went in the days of wheat harvest and found mandrakes in the field. Now we know that the primary descendants of Reuben, of course, are located in France. And we know that mandrakes are an aphrodisiac. Remember, we looked at the character of the French and saw those characters coming from Reuben. And he found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" And Rachel said, "Therefore he will lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes." In other words, mandrakes, that's why. When Jacob came out of the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come into me, for I have surely hired you with my son's mandrakes." And he lay with her that night. And God listened to Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages because I have given my maid to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. Now the question then becomes, why did she call him Issachar? Well, the name Issachar in Hebrew means reward or hire. H-I-R-E. And the Swiss are world famous for what? Their banks. Their banks. B-A-N-K-S, banks. And their banks take a commission or reward for loaning out other people's invested money. Switzerland is famous for something else, and it's watches, timepieces, watches, W-A-T-C-H-E-S. And the phrase that you often hear, it works like a Swiss watch, means that it works well with reliability and precision. The characteristics of Issachar: mercantile, they were very much involved in selling, buying and selling. Intellectual, neutral, but brave. We're known as brave. Brave, B-R-A-V-E. Legalistically precise by nature. And leave it to the Swiss to make something simple complicated because everything's precise. Well, I would simply say, look at decisions that come out of Geneva, Switzerland. They are settled in a landlocked area. You're landlocked. Switzerland does not have ports. And being an internationally connected people, and they are. And they are all applicable to the inhabitants of Switzerland. Again, going back to the description of Issachar, Issachar lies between two burdens, just is trying to be all things to all people. In Switzerland, the official languages are actually three major languages. Three major languages are the national language of Switzerland, plus a dialect. So they have, official languages are German, French, and Italian. And how many know that there are different Alps regions in Switzerland? The Swiss Alps, the German Alps, the French Alps, and the Italian Alps. If you've ever watched the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, they'll say, well, no, this is taking place in the Italian Alps, or this is taking place in the Swiss Alps, or this is taking place in the German Alps. But they also have a dialect named Romanche. Now, you say, oh, I'm getting lost in the weeds here. Well, now we're going to tie it together. Here is the tribe of Issachar. In Switzerland, a large percentage of the people of Switzerland are of the descendants of Issachar. And now you have this dialect called Romanche. Where did it come from? Well, it evolved from an ancient language that was very, very similar to Akkadian. And here's where you're going to get it. The Akkadian language was spoken by the Assyrians. Now I'm going to ask you this question. Who exiled the northern tribes of Israel? The Assyrians. And when they were exiled, and they would have spent time, obviously, with Assyrians, what were they beginning to pick up? They were beginning to pick up the Akkadian language. And probably it got mixed in with a little bit of the Phoenician Hebrew and Assyrian, and as they migrate, they pick up little places, so they get to Switzerland, and there's this dialect that's very similar to what the Assyrians spoke. A strong Israelite presence in Switzerland is certain. Even though, we know it's certain, even though non-Israelite elements were also present and at times set the tone for the nation. We know that. Any questions on Switzerland and Issachar? Now Finland. We know that Finland, the little tiny nation of Finland, also exhibits qualities attributed to Issachar, as Finland was also settled by part of the tribe of Issachar. So then we go back and you can look at your maps. We know that most of the Finns came from the area of the Volga River near the Caspian Sea. And right away, when we know that, we know most of the 10 tribes of Israel, once they were conquered by the Assyrians in 722 BC, they began to exile them. And where did they exile them? Between the Black and Caspian Seas. That's where they were exiled. We know that. We know that historically. We know that from archaeology. We know that's where they were exiled. So this was an area very much associated with the 10 tribes of Israel in their exile. And we do know that most of the Finns who came to Finland came from the area of the Caspian Sea. It was from this region that the early Israelite Khazars first appeared. All of a sudden they appear there. And where did they come from? What people group? Well, we know that they were also of Israelite origin. What is interesting is descendants, remember, we've studied this as they began to migrate. The Khazars were a people group who, for some reason, when Yehudahites began to migrate out of, obviously, exiled, just getting out of the pressures that were happening in that area, and they began to migrate into the area of the Khazars, around that area. For some reason, these people converted to Judaism. Now remember, they were another people group. So they thought, they didn't know that they were Israelites. They'd lost their language, their identity. They'd picked up other things. But here come Yehudahites into that area, Jewish people into that area, and of all the people groups that they mingled with, the Khazars actually converted to Judaism. Why? There was something in the DNA. There was something way, way, way back that was still there, and they converted to Judaism. Now, in Finnish vocabulary, there are traces of Hebrew, the Hebrew language. Finnish lifestyle practices. And again, sometimes when we ask, well, why do you do certain things? I don't know, we've just always done them. It was passed down to us. We always did a certain way. And I know families have certain traditions they follow. And those have probably been passed down from family descendants. Well, Finnish lifestyle practices are similar to Hebrew or Jewish ones. And I would simply say, okay, when you understand where Finland is, you would look at that and say, what? It's pretty strange. Where? And the next question is what? Where did they get them? Why are their family practices similar to Hebrew or Jewish ones? Well, like Jews, the Finns kept Saturday as the Sabbath. It's interesting. Mammy, Finnish unleavened bread is eaten at Easter. Unleavened bread. And they eat it at Easter, which is roughly the same season as what? Matzah is eaten at Passover. Now, if you'd asked them, why do you do this? They say, oh, we always have done this. It's very interesting. If you will talk to them, we've had some visitors that they have come from Finland, they've come from other areas, and it's really interesting because they'll say, you know what, we do this all the time at Easter, or we do this all the time. And you say, well, why do you do this? They'll say, well, we've always done it. Our family's always done it. We've just always done this. And now many of those people are Christians, and they say, we still do this because our family's always done this. A continuing wedding tradition that is still carried out in Finland in 2023, in the 21st century, is that of the bridal couple standing under a canopy called a hapu. 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 Oh, H-U-P-P-U. Hapu. In Finnish. Now, how many know where this is going? How many know? This is similar to Jewish weddings where the couple also stand under a canopy called a hapa in Hebrew. Again, you say, well, where did this come from? Well, it went way, 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 way back. And they may not even understand the origins, they just know we've always done this. So we've looked at lifestyle practices, we've looked at language. Well, DNA links exist between Finns, F-I-N-N-S, Samaritans, and remember Samaritans were those Israelites who intermarried with other people groups, but remained in the area of Samaria in the northern kingdom of Israel. And Jews. There are DNA links. And some of the same diseases, inherited diseases, that are prevalent in Jewish people are also very prevalent in Finns and Samaritans. And they are cystic fibrosis, Tay-Sachs, and congenital kidney disease.
Oh my.
Again, that congenital diseases are obviously come through DNA. And so here these people, now think about this for a minute. You have the Jews who lived in Eastern Europe after they migrated. You have them living in Israel. You have them living in some of the Middle Eastern countries before they were forced to get out of there. And then you have here are these Finland people living up in the cold north, and you have the descendants of Samaritans still living in places of Lebanon and northern Israel, and they all have the same risk for these diseases through their DNA. The Finnish name for God was Jumala. The northern Israelites, before their exile, actually pronounced the name of God as something like Yama. Because remember, their Hebrew was very much influenced by the Phoenicians. Now, El means God in Hebrew. El, Elohim, which is the plural form of El. And so now, here are the Finnish people, and their name for God is Yamela, which is kind of a combination of Yama and El. And so Yamela is the term used by Finns for God, and it basically could very well be the equivalent in northern Israelite Hebrew as Yama is God. Yama is God. In other words, Yama is El. Yamela. Yama is God. Yahweh is God. So now we're looking at DNA, we're looking at language, we're looking at even their words that they use in worship, their customs, all came over time. It goes all the way back. Now Switzerland and the Jews, a mixed history. Now while the tribe of Issachar is predominant in Switzerland, unlike most other countries identified as Israelite, and we've looked at some of them, right? We actually even looked at the nation of Germany when we talked about how there were people who were Christian, but obviously had Israelite roots, who risked their lives in, of all places, Berlin, to save Jewish people, and saved many of them. We saw what happened in France. We saw what happened in other nations. Well, Switzerland has somewhat of a mixed history. Because unlike those other countries, the Swiss had a darker side and were not infrequently anti-Jewish. They were frequently anti-Jewish. Again, I want us to kind of look at, there was a description of the character, the nature of the character of Issachar. He lays down between two burdens. I'm not going over there, I'm not going to go here, and whatever's in my best interest. In World War II, the Swiss persuaded the Germans to mark the passports of Jews with the letter J, so that they would be able to deny Jews refuge in Switzerland. History is what it is. Does that mean every Swiss is guilty? No, but this is the history. 10,000 Jews attempting to escape the Germans were turned back by Swiss authorities. The Swiss authorities. Now the Swiss did take in around 30,000 Jewish refugees during World War II. However, some of these refugees were cruelly treated as criminals. And this is just true history. And I want you to see that some of these people probably never realized these were their brethren. These are family. But they didn't realize it. The assets of Jews in the rest of Europe, deposited in Swiss banks and whose owners had been killed by the Germans, were expropriated by the Swiss and refused to their heirs. There have been recent movies that have come out. I don't know if there are a few good movies out there about trying to get property, whether it was famous paintings, trying to get them and redeem them and get them back to the families who really owned them. And how difficult it is, because basically Switzerland just refused to do that. And the Swiss helped launder Nazi gold that had been stolen from the Jews. And remember, I told you the story of the Netherlands. They took the gold, and they were trying to protect it, and they wanted to keep their gold out of the hands of the Nazis. And I told you this, they put them on sleds that were ridden by children down over till they could get into a border and get that gold across the border. The Netherlands. And why? Because they may not have even realized, but they were descendants of tribes of Israel. And they said, no, we don't want the Germans to get a hold, the Nazis to get a hold of this wealth. And that's how they did it. And of course, we know about the King of Denmark, who came out wearing a yellow star and said, he said, if they have to wear stars, I want everybody here in our country to wear yellow stars. Because if everybody's wearing the stars, nobody can tell who is and who isn't. They were doing everything to just kind of monkey up the business so that they couldn't do what they were attempting to do. But here, the Swiss had a little mixed history. Swiss companies with branches in Germany employed slave labor. And that's just history. Slave labor. But there is some, how many knows there's always good news, because there's always some good people. And it was not all evil in this time. And what's interesting is the overwhelming majority of the Swiss population. So not the leaders, not the people in control, but the majority of the Swiss population was against the Nazis and pro-British. Kind of sounds a little familiar today. The majority of the population, and then you have this little group that wants to scream the loudest to say, oh, we're in charge. And so the Swiss people, for the most part, did evade close cooperation with the Germans despite almost overwhelming pressure. And actually, there were also Swiss government officials. Now, you know, the work, the organization had a position that they took, and then there were individual people who are, sometimes get caught in that business, but they strived to help the Jews, and they did. There were government officials and individuals who strived to help the Jews. Now, when I said it was a mixed history, it was a mixed history because Switzerland officially recognized the state of Israel in 1949. And this is kind of interesting. That's why I say there's a mixed history, so you can't condemn everything. In 1999, our lifetime, Ruth Dreyfus, and I think the name speaks for itself, a former Zionist youth movement member, became the first woman president of Switzerland. And she held that office for a year. Unless you think, well, a year? Well, the office of the president of Switzerland changes annually. I don't know about you, but every 4 years is enough for me, more than enough for me. Can you imagine every year going through that? There'd never a break. So it wasn't that they kicked her out after a year. They just. Now again, I want to keep reminding you of something. How many know connecting them dots now? Issachar lays down between two burdens. It's 4 years, 2 years. That's too much. We just need to elect a new president. I just can't make up my mind about this. We need to be able to elect our president every year. But now think about this. That was the characteristic of Issachar. He's got descendants, and guess what? They're still exhibiting the same characteristics. Do you think God didn't know that way back in Genesis? He knew it. Finland is identified as mainly belonging to the tribes of Gad, Simeon, and Issachar. And that's why for many years, Finland was ruled by Sweden, which was Gad, primarily Gad, and many Swedes remained in Finland. And I'm going to finish note 36, and then we'll have to stop for tonight. In Finland, there are around 1,500 Jews, and they are located in Helsinki. And during World War II, the Jews on the whole in Finland were protected by the people of Finland. And I'm going to tell you this, and then next week, well, not next week, 2 weeks from tonight, I will give you an update, a 2023 update in Note 38 regarding the relationship between Finland and Israel. Relations between Finland are friendly. But I will tell you, and we'll get into this 2 weeks from now, in this year, in 2023, that has been complicated by the whole thing with Ukraine and Russia and Israel. Because Finland, it has to do with NATO, and Finland has joined NATO, and they want to get something from Israel, and Israel is saying, if we do this for you, then we're going to have trouble with Russia, and we don't want trouble with Russia yet. We know that Russia's going to play a major role against Israel, but so they're kind of, Finland's wanting this because of Russian aggression into Europe, and Israel saying, we can't. So right now, that's kind of what's going on. And I will tell you this: if you've read about it, it has to do with David slaying. So, no, not little David slaying, but the system, defense system called David.
I missed out on 18.
18?
The only one I got is Switzerland.
On 18?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Switzerland has traditionally been neutral, Neutral. They've always been neutral in world disputes. And the nation has used its financial, financial influence to fend off enemies.
Okay, well, must have all three. Thank you.
So when you see where the tribes have ended up, you can also begin to put together some things in an end time scenario as well. Any questions or comments? Yes. 35? Finland is identified as mainly belonging to the tribes of Gad, Simeon, and Issachar. For many years, Finland was ruled by Sweden, the nation of Sweden, which primarily has the descendants of Gad. So the primary descendants of Gad are in Sweden, and therefore many Swedes have remained in Finland. So 2 weeks from tonight, we will talk about a little place called Yad Hashmona, which means place of 8, and it's a Moshav community in the Judean mountains. So we'll talk about Yad Hashmona, which is a very important place today. Okay. Don't forget, if you're watching, if you would have a question, if you have a comment, please feel free to call us. The number is on the website. You can get that. If you need notes, you can either print them out, and I believe I've set a fire under our team that they'll get those up. I know for a while there we're not getting them up on time, but I think they're going to be up. So if you need notes, you can either print them off from being online, or if you can't get them that way, feel free to call in and give us your name and address, and we'll be happy to mail them out to you. Please, if you want to give in response to the teaching you receive, if you're in class, you can either give to the Joash Chest or our Israel fund. We do support a ministry in Israel. We also are desiring to help a student take the trip to Israel in 2 years. So if you would like, actually it's now just a year and a half. And if you are interested in joining us on a Holy Land trip of a lifetime, we will be journeying to Israel and Jordan in 2024. We'd love to have you go with us. We're actually in the next coming days finalizing everything, and we should be able to have enrollment forms and brochures for you then. It is going to be the most extensive trip we've ever done since 2001, and so we'd love to have you come. The prophetic significance of the places we're visiting are awesome, especially Petra, where we know God's people are going to be shut in and protected until Jesus comes. And the very first place he goes is to Petra to bring his people back home. So and you'll really want to visit Petra with us, and we'd love to have you go with us. So all you need to do is call the number on the website and say that you want information. We'll be happy to send it to you. Have a wonderful, blessed rest of the week. We will not be here next week. There will not be a lesson next week, but the following week we will be here. Have a great, wonderful, wonderful weekend. And know this, God loves you, and so do we, and we'll be looking at you in 2 weeks.